The story starts with mana particles soaring in the darkness. The man loomed over the guy and questioned if this were another alien from another planet. The protagonist opened his eyes wide. He was on his knees. His eyes landed on the city. Cradling the back of his head, the stranger questioned him where to begin. He spoke with a stern expression that first of all, he realized that the man was bewildered. He had to calm down and hear him out. The main character pulled up his t-shirt and started caressing his belly. Different warriors came into his mind, and we were informed that this world is named Aria. There are swords and magic there. The hero pictured a massive army of monsters, and we were informed that there are hordes of demons and monsters as well. Due to them in this world, there is a constant fight for survival. Particles of energy floated around the warriors, and the story informed us that this world can attract aliens from different dimensions into its war. We were taken through a big settlement, and informed that they would initially arrive in this city, the border city, Xenavus. Scanning the scared fellow, the man inquired whether he had learned magic or martial arts, to which he got a negative reply. Turning around, the stranger suggested that the protagonist was out of class, adding that he would explain in more detail on the way and asked his name, after which the protagonist introduced himself as Chuck. Reaching out his hand, the man informed him that from the time he had met him, he could not leave him to die and volunteered to go and get food, and he would tell him all there was to know concerning this world Aria. The happy protagonist thanked him. Entering the alleyway, the man extended a flask for Chuck to drink. Chuck took it, and thanked the stranger once more. He started to suck the water greedily. His cheeks bulged. The protagonist spat out water onto the man's face. Spilling the contents of the flask on the ground, Chuck told him it was not simple to fake being a newly hatched rookie, and then inquired if he wanted to give him the goblin paralysis poison to drink. The angry hero explained that the water-soluble poison was colorless and tasteless, but had a barely detectable, foul smell, and it slightly tingled on the tongue, but it would sting considerably more in the eyes. Catching his face, the stranger demanded to know how Chuck had known this. The hero showed his hand when the stranger decided this was not some newly summoned newbie in Aria. Standing before the man, Chuck responded that he was just that, freshly called classless. He punched hard in between the stranger's legs. The protagonist saw the blade which was in the bosom of the bandit and stated that he had 13 years of experience. Chuck took the knife. He removed it from the man. Swinging the dagger, the protagonist questioned whether the man had remembered the rule of Aria that no one can be trusted. Going through the items, the protagonist questioned whether the man was only 100,001 dagger. Tucking the knife behind his belt, Chuck thought it was better than nothing, just his body. Remembering how he inspected his stomach, the protagonist thought. He pictured himself from his previous life and underlined that he at once understood and did not feel a single muscle or scar. In fact, he came back 13 years before, the moment when he first showed up in Aria. Chuck looked upwards and mentally supposed that this object actually functioned. The hero pictured his photo from his previous life and informed that his name was Chuck. He was 27 years old, and prior to returning he was a mercenary of Class C. He had a typical poor life. He earned only enough to last him until the following day. The face of the protagonist was indignant as he told them that without inborn talents and noble birth, he was lacking in the way to the top. He was always on the lookout for the solution to this issue. Chuck picturized how he stumbled upon a huge red crystal and informed that he grabbed the most minute opportunity. He was fortunate. It was an unseen dungeon, and after a tiring fight he discovered a small box. The hero with immense hope in his eyes opened the box. There was one pink stone in the box, and Chuck explained that inside he found nothing but this stone, and from then on he kept it with him. He could not determine what to do with it, and why it was required, after which a message appeared that the stone returned was activated, he would be transported to the place of origin 13 years back. The introspective hero started thinking that he viewed this notice at the moment of his death. Chuck handed over the stone and proposed that it was necessary to send its owner back into the past. He with a confused face asked to demonstrate the characteristics. Glancing at the window with characteristics, Chuck read that he had no powers. Holding his head, the hero believed this was the same thing, he had a hope. But presently, he was aware that he arrived in area with precisely the same features as previously. With a bewildered face, he concluded in this situation, this is a meaningless backtracking. Chuck started walking ahead and believed that he has 13 years of fighting experience in area. His recollections are not very minute, but some of the most vivid moments he recalls. In front of the gate, the protagonist asserted the point that he can avail some privileges for classless. On the doors it was mentioned that this is a chiropractor's building. The main character introduced the fighting girls and informed us that various individuals from other worlds arrive in area, including magicians and martial artists, but most frequently, classless individuals arrive in area. Chuck pictured himself with the sword in hand and thought classless could be whatever they wanted to be, and there was even a growth booster specifically for them, and though it sounded good, in reality classless were always the bottom of the area food chain. Scowling, the protagonists started to think that they first had no skills and thus most of them just died without getting time to specialize. That was him. A C-rank mercenary, humiliation, poverty, a never-ending fight to survive, that was his existence for 13 years. Regarding the bug, Chuck reiterated that only an ignominious death awaited him. He had accomplished nothing and did not recall a single drop of pleasure. With his glasses, the old man inquired if the protagonist wished for an operation to refine his skeleton. The main character replied with a solemn expression that he did, and in his mind remembered that this time he would do anything to improve his life. Glancing at his hand, Chuck got notifications that his skeleton had been promoted to a low-level martial artist skeleton. He had acquired the heavenly concentration skill. The main character imagined the different spheres and marked that he now had 2 paths of development. This was something that he had not obtained in Xenovis last time due to ignorance, and therefore he had severed his line to climb in society. The protagonist envisioned his skeleton and exclaimed that the first direction was provided to him by the skeleton improvement operation. Now he had a special skeletal frame such that he could effortlessly command martial arts. There were a lot of needles protruding from his body. Though Chuck believed that he had to capitalize on the moment and take such a favor from the master, this was something he would do first when he arrived in Xenovis. He gave the wallet with cash to the old man and believed that a condition for free skeleton improvement was to be classless and skillless. Previously he did not know this and thus could not improve the skeleton, but in this life he would do everything correctly. There was a pop-up notification that the skeleton of a low-level martial artist is perfect for learning martial arts, possessing a small speed advantage when compared to a normal skeleton. Fisting his hand, Chuck believed that since the chiropractor would soon perish, in the future there would be no longer any out-of-class ones getting such an upgrade. Now he possesses a better skeleton and a growth booster, 4 out-of-class ones. This is the way to rapid success. From looking at the book, Chuck yelled out that the second growth opportunity that can be acquired only in Xenovis is the method of heavenly concentration. The man was surrounded by a purple aura, and the main character explained that this is a simple method for building spiritual energy. There exist numerous methods of working with energy, they vary by the degree of control over energy, and the rate of its concentration. He pointed to the book on the shelf and supplemented that in his previous life he learned the common method of the second level concentration, and only after that learned that in one ancient, unobtrusive bookstore Xenovis there is a book on the technique of the first level concentration. In front of the man, the hero purchased the book and explained to us that the bookseller was unaware of its actual value, and he purchased this book for pennies. With a smile, Chuck believed that he had rectified the initial errors that in the past deprived him of an opportunity for a better life. 2 out of 3 opportunities were not lost, and all of this on the first day upon return. In his fantasy, an image of the arena came to mind and the hero supplemented the fact that the third opportunity is to take a prize in the tournament in the Colosseum. The tournament will be held exactly 1 year later. Walking down the street, the protagonist reasoned that the requirements for participants were too low because this tournament was only for out-of-class people. He assuredly stated that he was sure enough of his winning chances, as long as he remained in Xenovis for a year and spent time training. Now he ought to get a job soon to stay somewhere, for that he had to make at least 30,000 euros per day. In front of the man, Chuck realized that he wanted a profession where he could also develop his expertise. He would be a monster hunter. Gazing upwards, the man inquired if Chuck wished to purchase something. Glancing at the items, the hero stated that this armor would likely fit him, and the trader indicated that its owner was just his size when he came to meet his demise. The excited hero requested to present him with the armor, a spear, and some daggers. Grasping his chin, the trader inquired whether he had money, to which he asserted that he had 60,000 there. The guy started laughing out loudly and screamed that he was willing to pay a minimum of 300,000 for all that he had picked out. Chuck smiled and asked if he could make payments. The merchant's face looked bewildered. The hero gestured at himself with a serious face, and queried how much the man would pay for his clothes. The man listened intently, telling them that they were produced in a very high-tech world. He was certain that there would be many who would want them. If the man could find the right merchant, he would pay a lot more than 300,000. The man laughed even harder with tears in his eyes. Gazing at Chuck, the trader inquired if he believed that he could get on his pity with puppy eyes. The trader wagged his finger and told him that Chuck was out of school and that milk had yet to dry on his lips. Leaning over, the hero said that he would be eternally grateful if they sold it to him for that pittance. The man extended the armor and accepted that the protagonist would pay in portions. The merchant smiled and explained that impudence was the second joy. He admired people who did whatever it took to live. If it contributed to him living, he would be only happy. The protagonist smiled and thanked him. The protagonist approached the forest feeling a spear in his hand. Feeling the new armor, Chuck started thinking that even lightweight armor doubled or tripled the chances of remaining alive. He did not regret having spent all that he gained and gone into debt, it was well worth it. The hero recalled how the man laughed, and saw that in his previous life nobody had done that to him, and then wondered if he had become more fortunate in this life. Luck is a phenomenon unknown to only a few people in area. Taking a step ahead, Chuck put stress on the possibility of the merchant intending to betray him and gain something out of him. It was better to be cautious. The protagonist halted in the middle of the forest. Gazing at the sky, the protagonist thought that he remembered when he first came there to hunt in his previous life. Holding a club in hand, the protagonist was shaking with fear. His expression was blank. Chuck laughed and told him that he was terribly pathetic. Remindings appeared that the protagonist recalled the method of lightning jump, steel breaking skeleton, stone breaking blow, spirit knocking spear. Chuck started running swiftly. His eyes fell on the goblin. The monster focused its eyes on the protagonist. The hero was about to strike with a spear. He stabbed through the head of the goblin and saw that this was the method of spirit knocking spear. The beast zoomed sideways. Dust flew upon the impact of the goblin's fall. Chuck suddenly scowled. His hand was wounded. Studying the wound, the hero believed that the fatal shot is an art of shooting a spear with the left hand. At first leaves to burn on the palm, getting calluses wouldn't be bad. The protagonist smiled. Pressing his hand into a fist, Chuck observed that even if he didn't understand the purpose of this comeback, he had a chance. A red aura surrounded the man. Blue particles showed up beside it. The sorcerer saw blue energy surrounding him. Chuck arrived at a tall building late at night. When he entered, the man welcomed him. There was a smile on his face. He was holding a bag in his hand. The protagonist announced that he had brought payment for lodging for the night. He pulled out a spear from the bag and explained that he got a discount from his merchant for such a purse, which is worth over $1 million. Examining what was in the bag, Jack observed that these were goblin lips and blood serum. With the fangs of the monsters in his hands, the man explained that this would do for a couple of days. With the Magician's Guild, they would never give him a dime for this, they are greedy. Referring to Chuck, Jack uttered that he had talent. He recalled the day he first met the protagonist and added that when an out-of-class boy came to him and volunteered to pay for the rent using the fruits of the hunt, he agreed and did not anticipate that he would live for long. Perplexed, Chuck listened, but that for 2 weeks already he has been consistently bringing him payment after a successful hunt. This is the reason why he states that the protagonist is gifted. The protagonist frowned at the statement that normally out-of-class ones just manage to get by. Taking care of Chuck, Jack told him that with his gift, he might as well turn out to be like Zian. Going up the stairs, the angry protagonist told him that he was exhausted. He balled up his hand into a fist. Stepping inside, the protagonist felt that talented was too much of a word for him. Chuck frowned and stressed the point that in his previous life he had only become a C-rank mercenary. The protagonist started to go through the window with traits. Chuck sat on the bed and enumerated all his skills and pointed out that all of them were techniques that he had acquired in his previous life. Frowning, the protagonist underscored that these were the mechanics of area. If he could recall the technique, then he could drill it. At least this was something to begin with. The angry protagonist appended that these were only second-level fighting techniques. Chuck envisioned a burly man pinning him down and underscored that these techniques would not take him very far. He looked at the heavenly concentration technique and the protagonist observed that this technique was his hope, the sole first-level technique. But this technique also had a limit, it did not give boundless energy. Chuck sat on the bed and frowned. He surrounded himself with white energy and observed that he needed more advanced martial arts techniques. The following day, a caller from the first floor rang the protagonist. A girl stood behind Chuck and asked him if he was hunting again. She asked him seriously why he was hunting like this, mentioning he was only risking his life in vain. The plot introduced us to the daughter of the innkeeper Jack, named Mia. Turning around, the protagonist answered that he was an alien there, this was his only means to earn money. Wagging her finger at him, Mia asked if he was foolish and why not get a job, even if he were an alien. Sighing, Mia gave an instance of the protagonist working at their inn, pointing out that Jack had nice things to say about him. Chuck shook his head in response, saying that this kind of work was not for him, since he could neither cook nor clean. Glancing at him, Mia added that finally, the profession of an inn staff member is not so dangerous as risking your neck daily on a hunting trip. A smile suddenly came to the face of the hero. He started to go away, promising to return for dinner. The hero recalled how he mopped the floors and believed that already he spent his life like an opportunist, being unable to say no to anyone. He had a smile on his face. Going towards the woods, Chuck supplemented that one could live that way, but he did not waste his life on it. The hero fantasized about a beetle moving towards the light, and included that this time he would do anything to possess what always caused him to feel envious. The hero, in a stern expression, said that for this, he would do anything, he would surely prosper in this life. The bell started to ring urgently. The hero stepped outside to the city square. Heaving up his head, Chuck believed that this was the noon bell. Newly arrived aliens will become visible on the square. A portal started to form before him. A girl stood before him. Observing her, the hero wondered whether she was a girl and whether she trained in martial arts. Sighing, the protagonist assumed that she was disoriented. No wonder, but the bandits in the locality would straight away recognize her by her act. The bandits handed her a flask. Chuck's face was stunned. He turned aside and assumed that it didn't matter to him. The protagonist collided with a man. He looked upwards. A big man was standing before him. He said with an angry face that the protagonist broke his collarbone. The man punched Chuck on his face. The protagonist was thrown to one side. This was watched by the villagers. With his hands held in front of him, the bandit stated there was no need to worry, this rude man broke his collarbone, and deserved it. He spoke with an angry face that he would teach him a lesson, and Chuck would compensate him. There was nothing to see. The crowd started to move away. The stranger saw him and inquired what he had there, to which he was told the main character had broken his collarbone, and would now compensate him. Grumbling, Chuck believed that they were also a gang. He was a victim of fate, though his punching was so-so, but still, he knew how to fight. Observing the man, the protagonist realized that this goon was a third-rate hand-to-hand combat expert. Chuck envisioned how one raised his level and made note that hand-to-hand combat skills were categorized into some classes. Third-class martial artists were the bottom, and were obtained in the quickest time even with minimal martial arts ability, but he still hadn't attained even the third class. Kneeling on one knee, Chuck stressed that this was risky. Scowling, the protagonist believed that he wouldn't be able to win by himself, and the local Zenavisa did not care for strangers. Nobody would assist him. Glaring at the girl, the main character exclaimed that this water could not be consumed, since it carried paralysis poison. The girl came to a standstill. The infuriated main character believed she was as old as he was, and he did not know whether she would amount to something, but it seemed that she had been called from Urim, so at least she must be able to do something. The girl started pouring water on the ground. The bandit approached Chuck and stated that he was such a good-looking fellow, but he acted so ugly, there would be customers for him among the depraved nobility. The man kicked his leg. Furrowing his brow, the protagonist thought that he could not leave it so, the bandit should receive what he deserved. Chuck jumped with lightning speed, dodging the punch. The bandit paid attention to the way the protagonist moved his hand. The protagonist struck him in the ribs with his elbow. The stupefied men shouted to their boss. Chuck started pummeling him. The man stepped back. Standing face to face, he started laughing and asked the protagonist if he had learned fighting. He observed with a satisfied expression that this would not deter him. Before him, holding his fist, the hero believed that it was as if he was a stone. He clearly knew some self-defense skills. He would not be able to fight him with his childish strength and weight. The second man extended his hand and screamed that the guards in Zenavisa, of course, were morons, but they couldn't do something like that there in broad daylight. They would come for the commotion. Sweat beads were streaming down Chuck's face. The girl stared at him in amazement. The bandit swung his fist. Although the hero rationalized that his fists were not much use, he must attempt with a spear. The hero pulled out a spear from his bag. The girl walked up to him and requested him to repeat what he had said to her. There was a grin on her face. The bandit charged at them. The stranger opened her palm to the man's fist. The bandit soared up from the strong magical blow. Grasping her hand in front of her, the girl stated that this serf did not know his place and dared to interrupt her. The bandits were a heap of unconscious men. Baffled, Chuck asked her who she was, mentioning it was a palm strike with a burst of spiritual energy. It is not the second, and not even the first lesson of hand-to-hand combat. Examining the girl, the protagonist came to the conclusion that she was a master, which meant that she was a minor heavenly demon, Chloe. The girl, with a smile on her face, asked her to tell him what this place was. The hero envisioned a figure surrounded with an aura of fire and believed the heavenly demon cult were members of an unconventional religion that revered strength and power. Chloe entered his mind and Chuck continued that the strongest among them will always be the one who leads, the heavenly demon. His sons are named young leaders. Glaring at the girl's back, the main character stated that she was an alien from Mir Rim and a young leader, a minor heavenly demon. Chuck scowled and put stress on the point that Chloe had master-level techniques, and when she arrived in Aria, she immediately gained fame, his classmate who topped the list as soon as he stepped out of the door. Of course, he did not even imagine something like that. The protagonist was surprised. On the bed, Chloe sat down and told him that she was 13. Chuck frowned and told her his name and age. Grasping her chin, Chloe told him that the protagonist had said something and she was interested in this area of the world. It was totally unlike her home world. She looked at Chuck and explained whether there existed a cult of the heavenly demon there. Smiling, the girl laughed and explained that all was clear to her. Her eyes were blank. Chloe recalled how the protagonist started shouting to her to alert her. The lost protagonist stood before her. Chloe laughed and inquired about how Chuck had the courage to call her, "You." Bowing his head, the protagonist apologized, observing that he did not know she was the young leader. Chloe smiled at him, and Chuck believed that he could not believe that he had to bow down to a 13-year-old. The girl also smiled. She put a finger at the protagonist and indicated that she had seen the protagonist fight and had not seen anything like this for a long time. The protagonist bit his lip. Hearing about a fight, Chloe replied that Chuck was clumsy, his techniques were no good, and their executions were worse, after which she inquired who instructed him with such clumsy techniques. The angry protagonist requested allowing him to inquire first what she was after. Chloe put out her hand and stated that she would instruct him in martial arts. The protagonist shut out what he heard. Chloe folded her arms and mentioned that if Chuck were to learn from her, at least he would no longer be so clumsy. The girl nodded towards him and said that she would instruct him in the martial arts, on one condition. Chuck was confused. Chloe stood before him and mentioned that the only condition was that the protagonist become her friend. The protagonist was taken aback by what she heard. Chloe gazed at the sky and cried out to her dad. She told him with a gleeful face that she desired having a friend. The man stood before her and inquired as to who informed her about such a matter. Chloe stood holding a book and informed him that she read it. It indicated that with a friend no trouble scares anyone. The girl smiled to hear that it was true, but for mortals only. The angry man folded his arms and screamed that Chloe was the heir to the throne and would become the commander of millions of demon hordes one day. The king did not require friends, and the intrigue presented to us the head of the heavenly demon cult, Heavenly Demon, Hank. Gazing at his daughter, he yelled that she ought to study martial arts rather than reading garbage. Chloe fled from him with a disappointed expression. Furrowing his brow, Hank felt that he had to say so. Glancing at the dead bodies on the floor, he realized that he was concerned. Seeing one of the dead bodies, Hank started thinking that he ordered fighters for training, and though all of them were amateurs, there were 50 of them and his 10-year-old daughter handled them easily. Hank recalled how Chloe struggled and believed she was his child, but she was so powerful that even her struggle frightened him. He declared with a grave face that he did not wish the lot to fall. The happy girl invited him to be friends with a smile. The hero pictured Chloe sitting beside Hank as a baby and believed that being the heir of the heavenly demon's cult, she was surrounded by people all the time and huge expectations were made of her. Almost from birth, her training started, and there was no time at all for making friends. Pointing to himself, the protagonist inquired as to why him, and Chloe explained if he was friends with his classmates. They shook hands. The girl with the contented face stated that she referred to the protagonist as her friend. She hugged Chuck, while he believed that he was indeed 27, and he befriended a girl who was 13. Chloe took a position in the middle of the room and explained that she would instruct him on the purple clay. The girl pictured a man shrouded in mana and a blade and informed him that the method of the Purple Dawn is a work developed by an unconventional group of demons. The energy when executing it is purple. Noting the angry face of Chloe, Chuck observed that he believed she would instruct him in the martial arts of the heavenly demons. Coming near the protagonist's face, the girl posed a question, "Don't friends call each other, you?" Chuck was amazed and accepted her proposition. A smile spread across the girl's face. She shut her eyes and informed him that she cannot impart knowledge of the heavenly demon on him. This art school is meant for the heavenly demon and his descendants. He will enjoy the way of the Purple Dawn. It is an excellent combat art. With a smile, Chloe asked if the protagonist concurs. Putting his hand on the cut on his cheek, Chuck believed a month had gone by since then. Bending over the corpse of the goblin, the protagonist observed that an amazing coincidence had brought him to meet Chloe, and she had instructed him in the art of the Purple Dawn. There were numerous monster corpses scattered at his feet. Chuck smiled wisely, believed that he was now a second to first-grade martial artist, which was a big thing in terms of his past. Chuck was furious and envisioned Chloe telling him that she was his teacher and that was what he had learned in a month, that he was actually untalented. The enormous monster flipped his hand, and the protagonist turned away, thinking he should gather all the valuables from the goblins. The protagonist was shocked suddenly. He evaded the blow of the monster. Chuck held the spear before him, thinking he would have rolled his head if he had not moved. Glancing at the monster, the protagonist wondered how the orc appeared. The protagonist turned his eyes away. The hero glanced at the trees. He looked at the woods on the other side. Being in front of the monster, Chuck did not know if he was alone. A magical strike struck the monster's chest. Its body was stabbed through. The orc hit the ground. Smiling, the hero thought that killing one orc was easy for him. Crouched over the body, the protagonist found it unusual, as orcs were not to be seen in this place. The The protagonist was taken aback on hearing a voice from behind him that Chuck was a good fighter at his age. When the guy was approaching him, crossing his arms, the guy informed him that his name was Ralph. The guy is called the Orchid Sword in the capital. The character saw a knife on Ralph's waist and asked him why he needed it. Pointing his finger at the monster's corpse, the man replied that there was some issue regarding this orc. Sunlight was covering the settlement. The man was crouching and inquired why they required this goldfinch, and we met Dobby, codenamed Monkey. Ralph gestured his hand towards the protagonist and directed him not to look, that he was small, he saw his talent with his own eyes. Orc would be more than valuable to them. Liam put his hand behind his cloak and mentioned that because Ralph mentioned so, he did believe him. The girl stretched out her hand and said she was Rachel, mentioning that she learned magic in the Vela school. Having a smile, she questioned whether the protagonist was aware of what kind of job he would receive. She mentioned quite a few monsters and said that a tribe of orcs recently camped close to the city. They were raiding villages, travelers. Ralph smiled complacently and said that the mercenary guild had put up a reward of 20 million eras for the person who sent the whole orc gang to the next world, along with the bounty that would amount to some 35 million eras. Pacing before the lads, Chuck explained how they were going to split it, and to which he got the reply that the prize money would be shared 5 ways. The hero with a deep thoughtful expression concluded that he would get around 7 million eras. Such a journey does not usually occur. He pictured the furious faces of the people and asked himself whether he could believe them. A smile was on Ralph's face. Chuck put his hand on his chin and told him that he shared the same opinion. Ralph took him by the shoulders and shouted that the main character made a correct decision. With him this issue would be much simpler for them. Chuck took his hand from his shoulder and expressed gratitude for the praise. His attention was drawn to the 2 men and the protagonist explained who they were. Ralph, glancing at the boys, stated that they were mere porters, they were classless. Ralph glanced at the man and stated that he was from Mirim. Rachel distributed money among one of the porters while Ralph stated that they would take their load. They were also supposed to be paid a little money for that. Ralph was standing beside Chuck and mentioned that they were not of any use. The protagonist was listening with a stern face, that he could only talk, and they would obey him. The bitter protagonist agreed to what he said. There was a crazy smile on Ralph's face. The girl chewed an apple. They went marching through the forest. Bobby with a stern face mentioned that there would be around 50 orcs. It would probably be only 30 of them to fight. He smiled and added that orcs were clumsy and dumb creatures. This was a simple task, you catch them off guard, kill them, and their money. In retrospect, Ralph mentioned that they would be dividing into 2 groups. He described the groups and mentioned that he would be with Chuck and Bobby, Liam, and Rachel as a group. Ralph visualized them navigating the woods and observed that they would draw the orcs out of camp, divide and conquer. Powering up mana in her hand, Rachel stated she would perform wind magic to make their scent waft all over the forest. The orcs despised nothing more than invasion into their area. They would abandon the camp to attend to them. Looking aside, Bobby went on to say that the orcs would walk right into their trap. On getting there, the witch would cast her war spells. Grasping a flare in his hand, Bobby explained that he and the young warrior would ignite this flare to entice the remaining orcs. He envisioned a map to combat monsters and appended that this way they would bifurcate the orcs into 2 fronts and take care of them. Chuck remained silent and thought that the strategy was ordinary, though simple. It would be good to prepare traps. But they did not have much time and there were not so many of them. Seeing the skull stuck on the tree, Ralph informed them that they were almost near their territory. Seeing the skull, he informed them that they would separate there. The men trekked through the woods. The porter was tired. Swinging around, Chuck believed that they had been traveling for half a day. For an out-of-class individual it must have been difficult. The man struggled to catch his breath. Glancing at him, the protagonist inquired about his name. The exhausted porter replied that he was Brass. Chuck with a stern expression stated that he did not know whether he could defend him once fighting the orcs started. Observing Brass, the protagonist asked him to decide whether he would proceed or flee. Looking at Ralph, the hero stated that he was certainly not going to defend the out-of-class individual. Weary Brass explained that he could not flee. The hero recalled how he was beaten and believed that Brass understood what the guild would do to him should he try to escape. Chuck remained motionless and requested him to fight back in whatever manner possible. Smiling, Ralph presumed that they were there. They halted. The guy explained that luckily they did not encounter any of their patrols. Far away there was a fence. This was the orc camp. Removing items from the bag, Chuck told Ralph to wait and not to ignite the flare. Flapping his arms, the guy inquired where the protagonist obtained the huge bag. He gazed intently and explained that the protagonist understood. Poured water on the ground, Chuck responded that it was a container of water. You have to replace the soil and smear yourself to cover up their scent. Ralph observed that the protagonist smeared himself with mud and commented that it was creative. His experience surprised him. Glancing up, Chuck declared that it was Ralph's turn. A crimson stream of smoke billowed from the forest. The attention of the orcs was diverted to it. Perched before the rocket, Ralph declared that he had an idea, then proposed to send forward the porter. He said with a contented expression that it would be preferable for them to send him so that he would send him so that Brass would divert the attention of the orcs, and they would attack them from the back. The man was shocked at what he heard. He turned to Ralph and informed him that the orcs would kill him. The man with a wild expression told Brass that if they failed to carry out the command, he would kill him for sure. Brass trembled with fear. Chuck clamped his teeth together in rage. He stood up. The protagonist with a stern expression announced that he would go first. Ralph with a satisfied expression concurred with this. An army of orcs was moving down the forest. The protagonist attacked them from the bushes. He chopped off the head of the monster. Blood sprayed from Chuck's spear. He killed another orc and counted that now there were 11 remaining. Swinging his spear, the protagonist wondered whether he could deal with all of them. The protagonist said in a serious face that he had told himself wrong, and that he could deal with them. Chuck pictured a dumbfounded Brass and wondered in his mind why he had pitted the porter, observing that it was useless to be merciful, but it might be sympathy. The protagonist leaped out of the ground. He pictured his face alongside Brass and concluded that they were not friends, however, they were classless, that was sufficient. The orcs watched Chuck intensely. He charged at the monsters thinking that whoever was powerful was law. He knew that this was the rule, very simple and merciless. Chloe had watched him and told him that however many times he had been told, he still could not do it. Chloe crossed her arms and told him to be thankful for his consistency and to pay attention to every word and gesture. Smiling, the man asked him to recall how to grip the spear. The protagonist sprinted towards the monsters and felt that he had to strike from a distance. He opened his mouth and began to chant it out loud. Chuck struck a mighty blow in the orcs. 3 monsters went flying from him. Ralph, meanwhile, was hacking down the monsters. Orc swung his brass club. He was trembling with fear. Chuck stuck the orc's chest, thereby rescuing the man. He had a smile on his face. They slaughtered all the orcs in the forest. After cutting off the orc's ear, the man said that that was it. He crouched down and said that there were 13 killed altogether. Ralph turned and explained that they could not have done it without him. He also carried their ears to demonstrate how many of them they had killed. The other group must have already taken care of the rest. The man tossed the bag and called out to the porter to take it and not to leave anything behind. He stood before the guy and told him it was time to leave, their friends would be discovered. Brass gazed at him seriously. Going past the protagonist, he expressed gratitude to him. The porter entered the forest. The protagonist observed him carefully. Ralph approached the monkey and inquired how everything went. Sitting on his knee, Dobby replied that they had shut them up a long time ago, inquiring why they were in the mud, if they had struggled, and that they didn't look quite good. The man was sweating as he clarified that everything went well, the little warrior assisted him well, and that they had done a clean job. Liam frowned. Grinning, Ralph said the true fight would now start for them. The boy felt anxious. A hand stretched from the shadows. Rachel stared in shock at the dagger plunged into her chest. Blood poured from the cut. Liam held out his hand. Ralph swung his blade. The main character swiftly swung his spear. The man scowled at him and told him not to meddle. The hero recalled that the boss, with a furious expression, yelled that the out-of-class boy should hurry up or he wouldn't pay. He pictured the sun over the city. The boy had a sack on his shoulder, and begging for pardon. Chuck was looking at the throng with surprise. Turning back, the man wanted to know what he was staring at. Had he never witnessed an execution or so? The hero recalled how, folding his arms, he declared that a very dangerous criminal, they say, a mere mercenary. Gazing at the man in the guillotine, the man declared that he went out with his associates to do a job, and then murdered all of them to get the whole reward, caught him red-handed, so now he will lose his head. The hero glanced at the criminal in a state of alarm, responding that it is obvious. He gazed at the happy opponent with a smile. Having stretched out the sword, Ralph stated that he did not anticipate that his response was so quick. The man frowned, hearing what he seemed to know ahead of time and believed that naturally he knew. He watched his execution in a past life. Watching him fly after the foe, Chuck considered that even 13 years had gone by. He remembered him quite well. It was the first time in his life when he witnessed an execution. The man frowned and declared that nothing could be done. He witnessed the boy fight against orcs. He shoved against the ground and declared that he needed to give him credit, he was a fine fighter. Ralph charged forward and yelled that, however, he was still stronger. The hero stared angrily, believing that this was a second-rate fighter. He was merely on the path between third and second-rate, and this was a really huge gap, but he should never give up. Stretching his spear, the hero believed that he was doing a great thing, anticipating his movement. Now he was obviously getting ready for a chopping move. He stretched the point of the weapon. Glancing at the on-rushing opponent, the fellow concluded that he should intercept him on the way with the spear. The fellow shrieked after receiving a hit in the belly. Smiling, Chuck explained if he meant that he was stronger, and believed that his previous life experience and what the little demon taught him were doing a lot for him. Lowering his head, Ralph responded that this was not bad. He vomited up blood and cried out that only how much more he could do. Placing his hand to his mouth, the man asked him what it was. Recalling how he had the poison in his hand, the protagonist narrated that he mixed a long-acting poison with the mud he had on him. It was non-lethal, as it had not entered his stomach. The opponent lifted his sword in fear, hearing his hands tremble, and he would not manage even a weaker rival. Pushing off the ground, the hero asked him what he would do. The man dashed forward. The guy standing there in awe had a spear. Ralph stood before Brass with the sword. Smiling, he stated that one step and he would kill him. Chuck peeked forward out of fear. The opponent smiled crazily, believing that he did care for this outcast, so he must have a soft-hearted fool. The man observed the boy grasp the gun and believed that he would have no option. Surprised, the protagonist questioned if he was in earnest. The protagonist approached him slowly, believing that he believed that having a hostage would set him free. Shaking his head, he believed that he had been a mercenary for such a long time, the only motivation to assist Brass. The man recalled the man's terror-stricken face and his own. Chuck raised his eyebrows confidently. Ralph smiled, having a deranged expression. Smiling, the protagonist thought it was not the moment to use logic. After the fight with the orcs he was tired. Lost in reverie, the main character imagined that if not for this situation, he would have plunged the knife into him before he had a chance to come to his senses. But he can't, no matter how hard he tries with all his remaining energy, it can go very wrong. He saw Dobby boot his opponent away, imagining that he can't rely on him not regaining consciousness from the poison too soon. If the monkey loses, then he will have to battle too. Frowning, the man made up his mind that he needs to do something, he has no option. Brass was perspiring in fear. He grabbed the leg of the opponent. Ralph coughed out blood due to the pain. Chuck stared at him in shock. The man was shocked, wondering how he dared to leave him alone. The porter's eyes widened due to the blow. Ralph smiled and explained that he should have obeyed him. He drove his sword into his foe's side. Gazing at the angry protagonist, the man beseeched him to desist and hear him out. The protagonist lowered his spear. Dobby was standing beside the vanquished opponent. The guy averted his sight at the corpse. Blood gushed from Brass's mouth. Having stabbed the enemy's body with a spear, Chuck informed us that Ralph and Liam were dead. He and Dobby proceeded to the mercenary guild and, having earned a reward for the orcs, split their proceeds and trophies between the two of them. Chloe smiled merrily and said he had come. The protagonist appeared in the room and replied that he was at work. The protagonist dropped onto the bed. He threw his arms out to his sides, wishing that if he had a bit more energy, he might have been able to save Brass. Frowning, the girl considered that the curse, she definitely didn't want to do something in this life that would cause him to feel guilty the rest of his days. Chloe folded her arms and stated that he murdered a man. She touched his cheek and said that she could smell blood. Chuck covered his face with his hand and replied that there was a second-class fighter who attacked him and thus he had no choice. On the edge of the bed, his girlfriend sat and said that he was hiding something else. The man glanced at her solemnly and declared that he should inform her of what else he had remained silent over. The main character gazed at him with concern. Chloe sat on the bed, observing her comrade's person. The hero's jaw fell wide as he replied that it was a really weird question and then questioned what he could possibly be hiding and if she believed someone like him couldn't take down a level 2 fighter. The brunette flicked her hand as she replied that it was not at all and that he was learning the way of the Violet Dawn, so it was really possible. The girl looked straight in front with caution as she added that he was unique. She pictured walking down the street as she said that she roamed the city and watched, attempting to learn about what type of world this was. Chloe observed a homeless man from across the corner as she declared that she noticed everything and that she immediately knew what the life of a classless individual was like. A dirty man consumed rotting food as she concluded that most were nothing. The brunette turned away disdainfully. She pictured someone swiping at the animal as she said she knew that humans killed insects easily, whereas not everyone was able to kill a small animal and that it involved crossing a certain line within oneself. The protagonist looked at the girl beside him. The lad went to the goblins when Chloe explained that on his first day of summoning, the first thing he did was to go hunting in the forest. Chuck was profiled when he inquired if it was that strange, going on to explain that otherwise, he would not have survived. The brunette's jaw fell when he replied that it made sense, and proceeded to ask if he believed that other classless lived in such a manner because they did not comprehend it. She pictured a sword-wielding man standing in front of a little animal when she uttered that they know, but will not dare to take a person's life, and that apart from the fact that he is absent from class, he is a teenager, concluding that something is not right there, and that she is getting to this. The hero sat with his arms crossed in front of him, when he replied that he knows how to accommodate. The girl crossed her arms in front of her chest when she said that he also knows how to sidestep direct questions, and that then she will reveal to him her other suspicion. Then she was questioned on whether there really is more. Chloe was in front of the hero when she recalled that he has no gifts. The brunette made this statement while the boy lay on the bed, reminding them that, considering the fact that he has no gifts, even if he learns with her, he can only learn a third of the information. Chuck had a spear in front of him when the girl told him she was interested in the aspect that no more than 3 weeks have elapsed since he hunted with a weapon, and his ability is already good. Chloe seemed pensive when she explained that most often a novice's weakest link was that they had no control over their inner energy and footwork, yet she saw none of those typical flaws in him. The room was displayed from overhead as the brunette questioned how someone with no talent could master the spear so finely in only 3 weeks. Her protagonist was sitting opposite her as she questioned him about who he was. Their feet were side by side. The protagonist gazed ahead with his mouth half open as he told her that he didn't know what she was referring to. Chloe's eyes glared with menace as she spoke, addressing him as a friend, that she didn't appreciate being lied to. Her girl stood before Chuck. The brunette sat on the bed, staring forward, when he replied that everybody had their own private things. The boy opened his hand, lowering his palm, when he asked whether it was not wicked to intrude into someone else's private life, and that she actually believed that friends did so. Chloe stood unmoving upright. The door was revealed when she stated that it symbolized he had secrets, and that they all had them, even her. The main character then gazed at the girl, who proposed to reveal her secret in return for his, to which he stated that he did not require her secrets. The face of the brunette was dripping in sweat as she stated that he was raising the stakes and that in such a scenario she would share her secret with him and also instruct him on a very powerful move, further indicating that he could opt for the art of spear wielding or the art of movement while fighting. The character gazed downward as he chuckled, responding that the sad irony was that he lacked the skill to completely master her teachings and lacked the inner power to completely implement them. Chloe glared at him, folding her arms. Her mouth grew wide as she shouted she would share a quarter of her energy. Chuck's eyes widened. The brunette was facing him. When he questioned her again, then she told him that she was extremely curious. The main character kept staring straight ahead as the girl continued and told him that he was her sole friend and that she desired to learn everything about him, and what secrets he was hiding. Chloe appeared serene when she summarized that this is the way she views friendship among humans, and then inquired if it was sufficient. A closet stood in a corner of the room. The protagonist sat on the bed before her when he requested that she promise something, then she inquired what specifically. The girl stared directly in front of her when he asked her to vow that she would not kill him if he was truthful with her. Then she inquired as to why, as he was her friend. The brunette rested her hands at the back of her head when she cried out that it meant they had determined everything, and that since she had vowed, she would be the first to reveal her secret. Chloe loosened up when she disclosed that she was a girl. Chuck's mouth opened wide. The brunette stroked a lock of her hair when she asked him what amazed him, saying that it was required by the sect, and that only a male can be the head of the heavenly demon sect, so her dad said she should live as a boy. The stunned main character sat before her. The girl gazed straight ahead as she continued to say that this is the reason, even upon arrival, she had kept playing this part, and that this is her secret, and now he has to share his. The brunette gazed at the boy sitting before her, who requested some time, since he needed to consider it all. The main character was lying in bed when he uttered that, first of all, tomorrow they have to change rooms. Then she asked him why. Chuck tossed his head back. His lips were shut. He spoke to Chloe sternly when he said that he was a returned. The girl's pupils became much smaller. The stars twinkled above houses when she asked what type of rubbish this was. The wooden ceiling was revealed when the girlfriend inquired if this was to say that he had died, but then went back to the past. They were facing each other when the brunette commented that it was unimaginable, yet she believed him, because it made a lot of sense. Chloe stared intently at the protagonist when she made that comment that if they were in another world, she would not believe it, but here in this place, anything is possible. The protagonist looked serious when she asked why he assumed that she would want to kill him. Adult Chuck within the boy opened his mouth when he replied that he had entered the body of a 14-year-old teenager but was 27 years old. The guys exchanged glances when the heroine questioned whether she was not offended that he had lied to her regarding his age, and because she believed she was before her peer, to which she answered she was not. The stunned protagonist gazed at his girlfriend. He recalled seeing her standing in front of him when the girl mentioned that she was the one who came up to him first and offered to teach him martial arts. The brunette outstretched her hand to him when she reminded him that she was the one who started their friendship. Chloe smiled broadly as she concluded that he had not lied to her, he had only agreed. Chuck was stunned when his friend explained to him that for her it was not a reason to kill him, and most importantly it did not raise doubts about their friendship. She visualized them sharing a meal when she continued that she had spent 3 weeks with him and that for her he was a friend. The girl placed hands on her knees, facing forward as she spoke the words that this was all and that she hoped that he was contented. The mouth of the protagonist dropped in surprise. He pursed his lips and then expressed his gratitude. The adult protagonist sat before his friend as he expressed his gratitude once more. Chloe gestured towards him as she went on to say what else she needed to say, that she understood the way in which small his level was in his previous life. There sat a frustrated boy in front of her as she continued and informed him that she had further questions, but she would ask them afterwards. A content brunette faced Chuck as she cried out that now she was going to transfer a quarter of her internal energy to him. The protagonist's face was covered in sweat. A hunk of a man appeared as it was described that chi energy is stored up by martial artists for use in fighting. A guy punched a tree trunk as it was described that it gives superpowers. One sat cross-legged while it was being described that martial artists slowly develop their energy potential through focus techniques, and that they typically practice it during their lifetimes, achieving phenomenal potential over a period of years, and that this is the root of a fighter's strength. The boys were sitting on the bed when the girls opined that his blood vessels were contaminated. Chloe gazed down morosely as she added they were highly polluted. Then the explanation was given that the movement of energy potential was an uncommon occurrence. She put her hand on the neck of the scared boy when she exclaimed that nothing could be done, and that at the age of 14 there was no time to start studying martial arts, and that everything was prepared, and now she was going to transfer a quarter of her chi energy into him. The brunette smiled when she told him that how much he would repress in himself only depended on him, and then instructed him to take the way of the purple dawn. She placed her hand on his back. The protagonist gritted his teeth. His palm lay open. The girl gazed at her hand when she asked him what he was thinking. The boy's body was filled with a purple aura. There was a knot of energy in his belly as he questioned whether or not it was just a quarter of her chi, then remembered it was far greater than what he had been able to hold in his previous life. The shadow figure was drenching their faces as the brunette questioned how much he had kept, and he told her that it was approximately half. A human figure was revealed as she questioned him again, and requested him not to be angry, and told him that the remaining energy would fade out through his meridians. Chuck glanced at his buddy with concern as he told him to take the Violet Dawn pathway, and told him it would pull in all that energy into his body. Chloe was resting on the bed exhausted. When she was questioned about what happened to her, then she requested her friend not to make a fuss, saying that she was just a bit tired. The naked hero sat beside her. His mouth was slightly parted as he pondered why she was doing this for him. The girl gazed upwards when she said that it was because they were friends. The ceiling was displayed when she told him not to mind, as there was nothing he was asked to do, that she only wanted to do it. The brunette's hair looked untidy when she considered that it was all for her benefit. The main character gazed at her friend in worry when she mentioned that now she would instruct him in another method, as she had vowed, or better still, the method of using a spear, after which he inquired about whether she would indeed grant him this too. Chuck looked down carefully as Chloe told him that she believed the Spear King's technique, the owner of the Great Ninth Sky Spear, would be appropriate for him, and since with his strength it would be hard for him to master it, she would attempt to primitive it. The brunette was beside him when she requested that he not require her to say that she was doing this for herself alone, or more so, for her very first friend in life. The boy seemed taken aback when she continued that she could not let him die this time, having lived only 13 years. He glanced down guiltily when she spoke of the girl's name. She slapped him in the face, saying friends do not bow to one another when he thanked her. The protagonist touched a raw nerve when he asked her why she believed so and what was wrong with bowing. Chloe hugged him, stating that she did not like it. They locked eyes with one another when the girl stated they should do something fun, and then he asked her once more. The brunette observed the protagonist when she asked him to narrate his life before. Chuck glanced at his friend, inquiring again when she asked him what he knew about her during those times. The girl walked away when the protagonist informed him that he was struggling to survive and was familiar with her only through hearsay, and that they claimed she was at the peak of Arya, unmatched in terms of power. Their faces were inches apart when Chloe stated that it was to be expected, for it was her, and then the protagonist replied that she departed from the city just a month after she surfaced. The brunette appeared pensive when the young man stated that nothing was heard of her for 3 years. The cloak-clad girl stood with her back to him when she ventured that she must have been on the road, then her companion asked her again. Chloe bowed her head, fists clenched when she told that she always missed freedom the most, and that in the cult there is no freedom, since everything is ever being watched and under the rules imposed by the cult leader. Chuck was confused when he inquired again after she recapitulated that this is the reason why she was brought to this world and became acquainted with him, her first friend. They were on the same bed when the girl stated that she would be leaving in a month's time. There was a wooden ceiling over them when she further stated that she would have freedom in this new world. The brunette smiled at the boy and told him that when he mastered the Ninth Heaven Spear skill from her in 1 month's time, she would depart as she did in her previous life, and then asked what he would do. Chloe gazed forward sorrowfully. The hero was sleeping on his side when his girlfriend rolled over towards him and told him that he had a new life now, and then inquired how he wished to live it. The hero placed his hand under his head, questioning. He recalled how the warrior swore at the servants and how he gripped the weapon. The boy recalled how he brought his curved hand to his face. An upright memory of an adult boy was displayed. A larva of an insect was on the ground. Nothing was present beneath the ceiling when Chuck replied that he wanted to live better than previously. The girl rested her head in her hand when she inquired whether all this was. The brunette gazed in front of her with a grin when she asked him if he ever had something he wanted to do. The hero placed his hand close to his face when he replied that he did not know even. They were reclined with their knees bent when Chloe asked him to think it over and inform her later. The girl gazed at her friend with wonder when she expressed that she recalled that she had wanted to inquire about his previous life, and then invited him to narrate. The hero placed his hand at the back of his head when he said that there was nothing special to report. Then she told him that she knew so, and that he was a hooligan. He was thinking about his previous life in Xenoviza, and if he had at least one friend. The brunette smiled, closing her eyes when Chuck realized that to his surprise, just as he was her first friend in her life, she was his as well. The young man was on the bed, turning his head when it was mentioned that the night was long. The friends were sharing one bed when it was explained that they had discussed everything under the sun. There were clouds moving in the air after a month had lapsed. Chloe extended her hand out in front of her when she turned to the protagonist, and asked to see how much he had learned in a month. There was a spear in his hand when he dwelt on the fact that it was near the time for her to depart and that following this training she would roam. The brunette scowled, keeping her eyes forward when he replied that now he was going to demonstrate to her all his strength. The cloaked girl stood erect when she asked if he had pictured it otherwise, and if he believed that with his skills one might fight short of full strength. Clouds drifted in the blue sky. A furious Chuck speared his friend. Chloe bent two of her fingers as she stated that she was giving him a head start of 20 moves, no more. The protagonist gripped the weapon in both hands as he pondered the number of moves and how to use them more wisely. The girl curled her hand forming a fist and said that she had worked out how to ease the ninth heaven spear technique down to his level, and that she had titled it the upgraded Chuck style. The heroine gazed at her friend in shock when he asked whether she had named it after him, to which she answered that she had modified the technique to suit him and then wondered why not include his name too. Bright stars twinkled above the houses as the young man thought that he did not want this. He gazed forward under his eyebrows, assuming that in this upgraded ninth heaven spear technique, she had adapted his ability with some of the sorrowful spear technique. The spear was in his grasp as he pondered whether perhaps that was the one to begin with. The hero stood in front of himself when he applied the first stroke of the upgraded technique known as Heartbreaking Death Strike. Chloe extended her hand. The weapon materialized in front of the brunette. She pushed it aside with ease. The young man struck her once more. The girl skillfully evaded. Chuck peeked in front of him, gritting his teeth, when he applied the same name style. They were facing each other when the hero executed the second move, lightning splitting strike. Chloe rolled her hand to the side, blocking the sword. The brunette smiled confidently ahead when she mentioned that in comparison to the start of his training, he was very good at the parry block strike move. The spear hit the blade when she continued that parrying is deflecting the attack of the enemy using an outward motion. The sword was held between the pikes while her friend described that blocking results from a downward rotation movement blocking the enemy's weapon. The brunette stood in front of the spear when she summed up that then you have to execute a strike that assaults the enemy. She faced the bewildered protagonist as she uttered that this was the fundamentals of wielding such a weapon, then inquired if he didn't already know about it prior to her teaching him, to which he answered that he did, but he learned them himself through experimentation and trial. Chuck looked ahead with a smile as he mentally repeated her words about him remembering to practice them every day until it became a habit, and then thanked her. The girl easily parried his attacks. She looked ahead smugly as she asked about his back, reminding him to work it to increase the power of the blow. The protagonist gritted his teeth in anger. Chloe deflected his attack with her hand while telling him that this was better. The outraged protagonist glared while mentally cursing, wondering if she did indeed have that enormous of an advantage. A reddish aura surrounded his palm as the boy considered the fact that he had already reached the second level of martial arts through the chi exercises his girlfriend had shown him, and she was blocking all his attacks with only her right hand. A strong aura surrounded the brunette when he thought that her level was peak martial artist. Chloe brought her hand to her face when she told him that he seemed hesitant, and then inquired if he had already lost. The girl stood facing Chuck. The main character leveled a spear at her as he asked if she believed he was surrendering. His girlfriend deflected his strikes, gazing ahead. The protagonist clenched her teeth with fury. The brunette extended her palm before her. Her hand reached sideways as she described the last move. The point of the spear came before Chloe's face. She parted her lips in a half-smile. Nobody was before Chuck. Something was behind the boy. The girl was behind the hero. Above the boys, a blue sky was there when she mentioned that he lost. The brunette touched the shoulder of her friend when she further mentioned that he was good, then he requested her not to comfort him, responding that she closed all things in ease, with one hand. The hero also looked at Chloe, who explained that he reacted well, and that even with the poor abilities of his chi, she was confident that he was meant for martial arts, because he sensed how he looked from behind, even if he could not hit. She recalled how Chuck widened his eye, encapsulating that when someone senses what he is not able to see, this alone may already be referred to as a superpower. Sweat dripped from the boy's face as he heard the girl state that someday he will advance it to the point that it will give him a huge leverage from others. The brunette was before him, when she inserted that she wished this would happen in 10 years, then he asked her again. Chloe gazed away contemplatively as she replied in the affirmative, stating that this training had been too easy. She recalled the spearhead's appearance in front of her when she informed him that she was contented with his progress, for he executed everything that she had taught him, and the final move was particularly impressive. The protagonist gazed into the future in amazement when the girl proposed that they should meet after 10 years. The friend appeared somber when reminding the protagonist that a month had passed since she had asked him whether he had a goal, and then if he had made a decision, to which he had answered that he did not know yet. The brunette placed her hand on her chest, in front of him, when she told him that if so, then let her be his goal. Chuck balled his fist. The vessel navigated across the waves as she clarified that an individual requires a purpose in life, and that an individual without it is like a vessel without a pilot. Chloe's lips parted in surprise, gazing forward as she invited her fellow soldier to make it a purpose to conquer her in combat in 10 years, when he said he couldn't, and asked him again. The boy opened his mouth wide and cried out that even if he set her as his goal, he still couldn't be like her. He remembered sitting in front of the warrior when he asked her not to speak about the impossible, for there was no way that he could do it, saying further that it was just impossible, and that he was not talented. The exhausted boy was carrying a bag when the protagonist remarked that she was talented, and that she was a natural prodigy, and also that she most likely still enjoyed the use of elixirs and did not know what it felt like to be nobody, ending up determining that it was out of the question for him. The angry girl stood before the protagonist, who screamed that they had always been unequal since they had stayed in place. They faced each other when she responded that he was beginning again, and that it was revolting to witness this self-abuse. Chuck gazed angrily ahead when his girlfriend went on to say that this is what revolts her about him. The brunette sighed when she responded that he was holding on to the failures of his previous life that were pulling him down. The young man appeared indignant when he told her that she was a scumbag. He opened his palms when he declared that he came there, nothing, and that he was summoned to area without skills. The hero recalled standing before the monster when he added that he had dared to hunt a boar and battled it among the greasy mud, and that he lived his whole life at the point of being alive, in poverty. Chloe regarded him gravely when she replied that now he learned under a master of mystical martial arts, and became a second-class fighter within 3 months, and then questioned whether this was a second chance for him. The protagonist clenched his teeth and was indignant. When she went on to say that he, in turn, listened to his inferiority feelings, which he carried over from his previous existence, and that he had no interest whatsoever in seeking meaning in life, since he did not even give himself a chance to attempt it. The girl placed her hand aside when she inquired about whether he actually rationalized that if something was not within his capability, then he would not attempt it at all, concluding that he had a new life and an opportunity. Then he requested her to be quiet. The brunette gazed forward nervously when she queried whether he was actually furious, to which his friend replied in the negative, stating that he was furious. Chuck stood with clenched fists when he chuckled, asserting that he could not believe a 13-year-old girl was lecturing him. The boy gazed in front with an eerie expression while saying that if she wanted, he would make her his target, and that he would train hard, with only one aim, to duel her in 10 years and drive a spear through her heart. Chloe waved her hand when she answered that it was not needed, because she would die, and she should not do it to a friend. They were opposite each other. The guy stayed in this position. When the protagonist understood what was stated, then the girl answered that it would be a friendly sparring. The protagonist looked forward cautiously. He put his hands over his face. Then his friend spoke about how he was so angry, and now embarrassed, and how it was hard to make sense of him. The brunette moved in close to his face when she said that then they would do so in 10 years, meeting. Chloe smiled sweetly when she spoke about how she would wait for their fight. Chuck was confused, glancing at her. The girl gazed straight ahead with a smirk as she asked whether he actually had butterflies in his stomach, to which the young man responded by saying she was just getting closer. Then he asked her what she was even asking him, as she was still a kid. The brunette came up to him once more when she responded that she was discussing nothing, and that he was really a 27-year-old man who had the face of an adolescent boy, and then he requested her to step away from him. Chloe buried her face in his cheek. Then the main character repeated his request, saying that she was too close. Then the girlfriend inquired as to whether he didn't like her like that. The girl pictured a beautiful woman when she claimed that in 10 years she would become a tempting maiden of such loveliness that he would be at a loss for words, and that then he would not be able to see that she was still a child. The brunette was carrying a knapsack when she uttered that they would meet again 10 years later. Then it was revealed that the 3 goals the protagonist had set for himself were, first to survive, second to take advantage of all the chances he missed in his previous life, and third was Chloe. Chuck stood upright as he said the same thing with her, mirroring her. The girlfriend turned around happily as she urged him to enjoy his life. The dark-haired boy grinned as he said that he would surely do so. Her foot lifted off the ground. The protagonist advanced by a step. The comrades went in separate directions. In the background was a skeleton as the hero cried out that he had 3 opportunities he would not want to miss in this life, such as the skeletal improvement surgery and the heavenly concentration technique. The building was depicted as 3-storied as the boy continued to say the last one was the competition for the extracurriculars. Chuck looked straight ahead intensely as he told him that Xenobaiza tended to have different tournaments, and that there was one that he could join as a classless. The dark-haired man spread his arms when he saw that the boy had also attended the tournament, and then told him to quit right away, as he himself was a level 3 fighter. The brunette tightened his fist before him as he reflected on how it had been 10 months since Chloe's departure, and how within that period he had risen to level 1 in martial arts, and how victory had came to him so easily, since he had no match from among the classless. His hand went towards the red pill when the reason why the tournament's prize was a sacred elixir of power that augmented the potential of chi energy was revealed. The boy was surrounded by a purplish aura as he explained that he took the potion immediately and that the holy elixir of power was a great boost to his energy capacity, although it was administered to him by his friend. The hero gazed downward reflectively, understanding that he had now received all he desired from the metropolis of Xenobaiza, and that there was one thing remaining. Skyscrapers were demonstrated as a person spoke to Hans. The bearded man opened his mouth wide apart. The hero was approaching him as he stated that he learned about his success at the tournament, congratulating him, and the boy expressed gratitude to him. Chuck gazed forward when he responded that he had come to bid farewell after Hans inquired what brought him. The bearded man gazed up as he informed Hans that he knew. He placed his hand on the boy's shoulder when he told him that the little class brat had done everything possible in Xenobaiza and that he was glad for him. Then the protagonist responded that it was all because of him. The main character smiled forward when Hans mentioned that the world outside was not safe, but he would surely manage, since the intelligent ones live longer than the rest. He knew that, since he was a person like that too. The man was holding an object when he stated that it was for the boy. Chuck held the gift in his hands when he realized it was an oversized bag, and then he was cautioned that it was not new. The bearded man smiled at the boy when he put in that this one was a 1.5 times bigger one than the one the boy purchased from him, and that this product would be useful to him. Then he was questioned why he was providing him with a present. The hero was behind Hans and told him to accept what they offered him, saying that he would not be able to sell it either, as it was bad shape. The man sat in front of the hero as he claimed it was his farewell gift, and if he wished to thank him this much, he should return when he became successful and give him 100-fold. Hans grinned as he added that he should inform people that he used to be in debt to a merchant bearing the same name when he was young. Chuck kept his eyes fixed in front of him as he thanked him. There was no one present in the tavern. Someone emerged. The young man avoided looking at him as he spoke to the girl by name. Nia gazed gloomily when she asked him if he was leaving. She widened her mouth when she questioned him on how she knew, and the girl said that a blind man was the only one who would fail to realize that he had cleaned his room for the first time in his life. Mia sat on the table before him when she inquired of him why he cleaned, this time including that it was her duty. The hero gazed down warmly when he told her that he knew. The girl kicked her legs around when she told him that she knew that they, aliens from other worlds, would depart their city sooner or later in any case. The hero observed her when he consented, telling her that he had to leave. The brunette slightly opened her mouth when she inquired if it was true. Chuck gazed in front when she wanted him to vanish and die a nasty death somewhere. The distressed girl turned away from him. She approached her father. Chuck gazed in front puzzled. He closed his eyes while he asked the boy not to be angry and to realize that she was young, and then realized that he was even younger. Sweat broke out on the protagonist's brow when he replied to that. Naturally, he knew all about it. Then the man inquired as to why he was so young-looking but mature in years, stating that it was as though his soul far exceeded the age of his body. Chuck gave the boy a robe and told him to take it, and then the protagonist wanted to know what it was. The man pictured a fighter with a sword when he replied that he wore this cloak in his youth, when he was a knight, and that it appeared ugly. But it contained warmth magic and magic that aided sword fighting, so he believed he would require it. Chuck was checking out the gifted robe when he thanked Jack, who informed him that the cloak was too large for him, and that he could have it altered. The man placed his hand on the boy's shoulder, as he continued that he would travel far and that he was the most skilled outlier he had ever encountered in his premises. His eyes welled up with tears as he asked the boy to look after himself. The protagonist advanced one step. He glanced forward cautiously. Mia clamped her teeth. The cloaked protagonist faced away from her as she called out his name. Chuck turned his back, glancing over. There was a girl behind him. The brunette was wiping away sweat from her face, telling the boy to stop as he spoke to her. They stood on opposite sides of Chuck as Mia apologized, and then he asked her once more. The protagonist appeared to be shocked when she apologized for hoping he would die. The exhausted girl looked devastated as she told the boy not to die. The hero gazed at the brunette as he inquired whether she had indeed run so far to inform him of that. Chuck stood between Mia and himself, and she burst out that it was a shame he was leaving, and that she wished him long life, and that if it was difficult for him, unbearable, then he could always come back to their city. The young man was presented in profile as he replied that it was all right, thanking her. The girl bent her head down when she said that it was odd, but one day she looked at him with totally different eyes. She pinched the hem of her skirt when she added that she had no idea what was wrong with her, and that to her it appeared that she just suddenly started liking him. Mia smiled into the future when she stopped talking. The boys stood facing each other when the protagonist replied that he could see, then she mentioned that she got it, upon which he apologized to her, and the girls mentioned that all was well, and told him to just take care of himself. They stood near one another when the protagonist explained to her that she should not be afraid, as he would not die, to which she said it was okay. Chuck lowered his eyes when he bid her goodbye. Mia placed her hands over her face and cried while bidding him goodbye. The city stood in the background behind the boy as he reflected upon how it had taken him 3 years to leave Xenobus in his previous existence, whereas it had only been a year this time. He pictured Hans, Jack, his daughter, and Chloe as he understood that it was peculiar that he did not have any positive memories of his previous life, whereas in his new one he had got all the positives that he lacked. The main character turned away as he thought perhaps one day he would be able to come back. The city was viewed from above as he recalled the instruction to look after himself and the response to this instruction. The hooded stranger opened his mouth when he declared that the people of Mount Mercer welcomed him, then inquired of the child what sort of ban he wished to impose upon himself.